My name is Kayla, and I'm currently a senior here at Bennington College. I study the literature of forced migration, focusing specifically on refugees leaving Syria after the 2011 civil war. This year, I am working on my thesis, which is currently 8 pages of literature analysis on 3 different books, which are fictionalized accounts of other people leaving Syria. I have been working on it for about 6 months now, so it's been a really major part of culmination of all of my studies at Bennington. It's a product of my literature classes, of my sociology classes, my political theory classes, and really understanding things from fieldwork terms, from experiences outside, from my study abroad, and really bringing it all together into one really long, really long piece of my thesis. I first came to Bennington with the intention of studying psychology, and what really drew me to psychology at that point was the empathic connections between people and what makes people relate. How can you build this connection, and what does such a connection do for the world? I looked at that through the lens of psych classes, but I also took a wildcard class of Intro to Peace Building. That was a really interesting class for me to begin to sort of conceptualize conflict and peace building and moving forward, and the emotionality that goes into that, while also thinking about an international scope for conflict. Not just thinking about one person's ideas and background, but coming and culminating the emotion and the value of conversation, connection, and cross-cultural work in healing from a conflict, and how you can use stories and storytelling as a piece of healing. That's been a really important thing that I'm looking at now in my thesis, is how to heal from and move on and support this rupture that's caused by crossing a border and leaving one home and creating a new home. After this peace building class, I wanted to delve more into conflict resolution, and that was why I looked for a internship in Seattle with World Relief. World Relief is a refugee resettlement agency that helps newly resettled families and individuals from a variety of countries. And the time I was there, it was predominantly from Afghanistan and Ukraine. They provide services including job search help, English language classes, job placements, so apartment placement, figuring out how to get benefits. I was working mostly as an assistant for the caseworkers. So I took refugee families and individuals to get themselves registered for doctors, or help going and taking the bus and what that looks like, as well as working to get students registered into schools. That was such a moving experience for me and really set me on the path of thinking about refugee resettlement. Since then, I've been incredibly active with refugee advocacy and involvement in the policies in the US and abroad with concern to refugee policy and asylum policy. After my fieldwork term in Seattle, I went to Morocco my junior year. I was studying migration and transnational identity, working on populations from sub-Saharan Africa moving into Morocco and staying there permanently, or using that as a sort of transition to get to the rest of Spain and Europe. That was a really important move, to be abroad and to be thinking about these issues in the region specifically that I'm interested in. It was also a really great chance for me to understand an international scope. At the same time that I was there, all of the policies around the caravan and Trump's policies on cutting asylum entries into the US, and the children that were housed in detention facilities and were being deprived of certain resources, that was all sort of at the background of my mind, in the forefront of my mind, really, as I was studying these policies and similar acts in Morocco. I also took a lot of really instrumental classes to help me get to this point, focusing a lot on identity and how literature can be a place to explore and consider these identities. I took a class about bilingual lives, which authors who live in 2 different or 3 different languages were writing about that experience and what it means to translate your identity and yourself from one language to another, and whether that border is only metaphorical and only sort of in your mind as a shifting between 2 languages, or if it's also the physical demarcation of a borderline, and how that affects the way that you're writing and the way that you're conceptualizing yourself. Those are all really important topics and ideas I've been ruminating on for 2 or 3 years now. And so writing my thesis has been really important for me to get to the crux of everything, and how the emotionality and storytelling and active involving a community of readers and empathic listeners can be instrumental in moving forward and finding a new home and finding adjustment and family and hope amidst, you know, everything else. So in the novels that I look at specifically, I'm thinking about the way that forced migration or dislocation from one home to another and the crossing of borders physically and mentally have an effect on your identity and your conception and understanding of things like security and family, color, violence, and all of those things are sort of wrapping up in my thesis now. So thank you very much for listening. Have a great day.